Hi everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we're going to do some more cake dyeing. Are you surprised? I've been on a bit of a cake dyeing kick lately because injecting dye into the center has been just a lot of fun. Today I want to play around with some non-superwash wool. This is actually the yarn that I usually choose when I'm doing some cake dyeing because dye strikes slower to non-superwash wool in general, so you can get more spread. So when you're just dealing with a mixture of dye on the outside, that helps you get a really beautiful gradient from the outside to the interior. But we're not just gonna do that. We're gonna inject some dye. So today I wanna add some color to the outside like I would do in a very typical cake dyeing technique. Then I want to just inject some color into the center to give us that secondary color. And I might, in addition to injecting into the center, I might drag a little bit across the top so that way there is some blend going through, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see how things go. Ooh, part of me was like, should I do 2 cakes? Maybe I should do 2. All right. So I ran and whipped up a second yarn cake. This way we can do 2 and then we'll inject dye into one of them. And so then we have something to compare it to. We could see what the gradient would look like if I hadn't injected the dye into it. That'll give us a better picture. I do not expect that this will look like the same thing as if I were to cake dye the yarn once, then wind a new cake with having the inside yarn now on the outside, and then doing it a second time. I think that this will look different because I think with injecting the dye into the center, the area that gets that color might be smaller. But I still think that we have the potential for something really, really fun and cool. And so, yeah, I want to give it a shot. Well, because I messed up with counting, I'm actually not sure if there's 16 cups of water in here or 24 cups of water. One of them. I do decount, and I know I added 4 tablespoons of white vinegar to our pan. And while our pan is cold, I am going to add our 2 yarn cakes. The reason why I decided to do this is so that way I can treat the 2 cakes similarly. It's possible that there will be some differences between them because of how tightly they were wound, etc. But if I have the dye in here first, I'm not going to, with tools, be able to saturate them at the same time, in the same way. And plus, in pressing on it with dye already in the pan, that dye will start sort of being sucked up inside the cake, which is cool, but gives us a different effect from what we'd be doing otherwise. And so now the dye will be able to travel towards the center somewhat, but not in quite the same way it would have otherwise. After pressing them down, the yarn cakes are resting on the bottom of the pan. And actually the 2 burners are probably about here and there. So they do have even access to heat, unless they start floating around some. Part of the yarn is above the surface, just barely, but you know, that could shift and change as things happen. But now I'm going to start heating things up, and then we'll prepare to add our first color. Wow, after even just 3 minutes, that is already getting nice and steamy. So let's add our first color, which is going to be the only color for one of these cakes. And that color is some Dharma Electric Violet. I'm going to add a 1/4 cup down around one cake and a 1/4 cup down around the other, and I'll come and stir things up in just a minute, but maybe also rinse off. I'll just use my measuring cup to stir things up, which did lift, the cakes did move a bit from that, but that's okay. Wow, the water is looking very like Bordeaux colored right now. It is a very beautiful, almost burgundy, even though I know that the color and what you see coming into the yarn is much more purple. I just set a clock for 20 minutes to come back and decide if we needed to add more acid. Looking at this, I now have the debate. and that is a debate whether I should scoop some of the dye on top. And I think I'm going to avoid that. That way we can see if color is pulled towards the center of these cakes. The total amount of dye that we added was about 120 milliliters, which is about 1.2 grams of dye per 200 grams of yarn. Assuming that my stock is still the same concentration that it was when I first mixed it. And with older stocks, sometimes you don't really know. So anyway, I do know some dye made it to the bottom because as we stirred, I saw the cake sort of lift up. But we're gonna wait 20 minutes, see how much of the color has absorbed, and I just wanna let most of that happen before I inject dye into one of these cakes. Okay, I feel like I've cheated a little bit, but because I'm not pouring anything over the top, I decided to lift the bottom up. And okay, I did that once already, and now there actually is more color down on the bottom. Before, when I first lifted it up, it looked really pale. And by doing that, I did get a little bit of color here in the center. But I figured, it's my rules. I'm making them up as I go along. I think it's okay. I'm not sure how far this color is penetrating. I think that the other times I've done this, the cake has been in, like, submerged, so that way it's moved around a little bit versus just sitting on the bottom, so that way dye has covered the top. And when the dye goes across the top, since we've got yarn going to the center all the way here, that contributes to that color that you see going all the way to the center. So, I mean, we have no idea what's happening towards the interior. All I know is that it's warm on the top and I can't really peek and see anything. So we just have to be patient. I do believe that this color, and just from those little dips, the color that's left in here is not a ton of pigment. And since we have so much volume here in the pan, it could take a while to absorb, but maybe once our 20 minutes are up, maybe then will be a good time to inject the color. I'm not sure. We'll see. Okay, I'm coming in with more vinegar. I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I will try my best to keep track of all the vinegar down in the video description. In all of my videos, I usually annotate them with timestamps to various steps in the video in case if you're rewatching, anyone will jump back and remember like what I did or how much dye I added and things like that. So there's a lot of handy information in there. I also usually link to the yarn that I'm using, the pans, and so you can get more information about the tools and equipment that I use. Some of the links are affiliate links, but I do have those clearly marked. And with affiliate links, I do earn commission when you make purchases through them. Yeah, but I try to have that very clearly marked for all of you in there, so you can go and check that out. Anyway, I think I'm going to wait a little longer before adding that navy dye. Oh yeah, had I said before, I think that the other color I want to do is navy. I think that that would be really, really fun. So I'm going to wait. All right. We've still got a lot of color on the outside. We will probably add a yarn mop at some point. I just mixed 1 teaspoon of my dark navy slurry. Here is the bottle, and when I shake it, like there's like crystals in here. Something's crashed out. The stock is not in the best of shape. So I took 1 tablespoon of that and 3/4 cup of water to create our navy dye right here. All right, and I wanted to show you guys that we still have a fair amount of color left here in the pot. Now, starting with this one closer here, I've got 10 milliliters, and I'm just going across it in a line like so. And I'm still planning to inject into the center. But now my wondering, let's finish up that 10 milliliter. I kind of want to do that on this one as well. So I'm just taking 10 milliliters of dye, and this is not injected. This is just on the surface. And we're going back and forth. This will now have some amount of color all the way towards the center. For sure. Okay, and now I'm coming in with 30 milliliters of my mixture, and I am injecting the syringe into the center and putting all the dye in. I did not push down very hard, but that was a lot of volume. And I think I want to do this once more, but a little more off center. So I have it pressed in now at kind of an angle. And I'm pushing that navy color in. So it was sort of angled. Oh goodness. Was my hand in the way? I hope not. It was sort of, I pressed in and sort of angled it this way towards the center, but towards the side. So we'll see if that makes its way through. And I'm going to hold back. I'm holding back, everyone, from adding more color here and here. I still have a lot of the navy left, but I think I'm going to save that for the end when we will probably do some kind of yarn mop to soak up the rest of that purple color. But I'm going to let this sit for 20 minutes now. You know, these yarn cakes almost look like eyes. I mean, it's sort of a weird look. But anyway, I am now going to come in with a yarn mop. I want to do the yarn mop first before I go ahead and add more vinegar, mainly because I am curious. And I should move these cakes over. But you can see that we do have a fair amount of color. I do plan to use that the remaining navy dye on this yarn. I'll layer it on after we've removed the cakes so I don't bring that navy into here. But the yarn that I'm adding in right now is a skein of Knit Picks Swish DK, which is completely dry. And this yarn is 100% superwash merino wool. And so you can see that we did immediately absorb some color. And so I am just going to, I guess, leave this in here for a little bit and see. There is still a lot of color back here. A lot of color. I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's go ahead and do 6 tablespoons of white vinegar. And we can stir things up. You can see, sometimes you can tell when you move something that some of the color had absorbed, and then there's some pockets where it's a little stuck. So sometimes moving the yarn through will help it absorb that excess color. But the more that we absorb in our mop, the less rinsing will have to happen later with these cakes. So again, I'm going to let it sit for a little bit. Okay, moving this around with that extra acid, we have absorbed all of that color. So I'm now going to, and it's a little warm, so I should not really be doing that. But ooh, look at that navy center of the one we injected with. Okay, we're going to set you aside, and we're going to set you aside. And this one, the bottom does not have that navy detail. All right, our cakes are set aside so they can cool. And as for this yarn, well, we don't want to leave any dye behind. So I'm gonna add some navy and sort of swirl. Oop, the dye bath is warm, but not particularly hot. And I just added that dye in and moved the yarn around. I think it's barely gonna make a difference on that deep purple, but I think it'll be really, really pretty. So I'm just gonna leave this in here. Ooh, we might end up with a little bit of speckling. Oh, it's from some of those like particles. Huh, okay, I am gonna stir some more then to sort of help that dissolve. But yeah, we might have a couple rogue speckles on here. That's okay. All right, I'm gonna leave this here for on super low heat for maybe 15 minutes just to absorb that color, and then we'll come back. Okay, I am going to turn off the heat. There is some color around the pan, but sometimes I find navy tends to stain the sides of my pan, making it hard to tell when it's cleared. But I'll leave this mop in here to cool off completely. Okay, let's wash our yarn cakes gently, and our yarn mop. With the mop, I will end up doing a full wash because I can, but with the cakes, we can't really yet. So just a good soak, and then I'm going to put these through my spin dryer to remove as much of the water as possible, so that way the cakes can be as dry as possible before we unravel them. And for our mop, I'm going to add a little bit of dish soap to the water, and we'll check for bleeding. Not that I'm expecting there to be any. And then we will rinse out the soap and also put this through the spin dryer and hang it up to dry. The two yarn cakes are dry, and they look very, very similar right now. One just has a little bit of a line of navy and one was injected. Of course, on the bottom, things are looking quite different. So I'm really excited to unravel these two cakes and look at them side by side and see how much of an impact injecting that dye into the center versus just adding some on a very superficial level makes to the overall colorway. Here are the two gradients, and right off the bat they look so similar. Can you tell which one had the navy injected into it? Can you? I'll give you a minute. Clearly this is the cake that had the navy injected into it. And you can see that the navy starts more intense and then sort of slowly shifts away. And I think by the time we hit maybe around here, the rest of the cake isn't really as affected anymore. We see some hints of that navy in this edge that go fairly far, like all the way through, because of where we added it on top. It really does feel like we just added a bit of color here to that inside. Now, I think it might be beneficial when injecting into the center to maybe do more than once, and so that way it goes a little further. That would give a more similar feel to doing the cake a second time. If you really take the time and inject more color in there, you could eliminate more of the pastel. Or we could have less vinegar in the pot as well. That is definitely another option. I really like this little reverse speckling that we see here. I'm not used to seeing as much of this on the yarn cakes that I've done. Maybe I think because we had more vinegar, so things just struck faster. But this reverse speckling is absolutely present on both of the cakes. Injections aside, the cakes are otherwise extremely similar. Now, if you were to start with the purple end and try to knit a hat, there would definitely be differences because of the tightness that they're wound and just how the yarn is laying on top of each other. But it's remarkably similar, which I'm really excited about. Clearly, there is so much more that we can do to explore this technique and to push it a little further. I think anything that we can do to have a 2 or even 3 color kind of gradient kind of thing by injecting colors into the center. If this eliminates the other step of rewinding the cake, then it makes it that much more easier and feasible to do. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you appreciate my approach of playing with color and experimenting and tweaking my techniques, go and check out the ChemKnits Patreon. It's a great platform that can connect you with the content creators you enjoy, and it's a wonderful way to support them and get some fun perks in return, like early access to new content and things like that. You can find all details about the Patreon in both the video description and in the iCard, which is that little symbol in the top right-hand corner of your screen. What colors would you like to play with? Do you like the injecting the dye, or do you prefer just the subtle hints on the outside? Let me know below in the comments section. If you enjoy the content, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. I publish 2 videos at least twice a week, and you really don't want to miss any of it. I know that playing with yarn and color is a great way for me to escape everything else that is going on, especially when I'm not really going anywhere. I hope that all of you are staying safe and healthy, and I wish lots of love to all of you, and I'm sending a huge hug from far away. I am not quite finished with this project. The last thing that I have to do is go and wash the yarn. We only lightly rinsed it, and some of these cakes, when you open them up, they still smell a lot like vinegar. I will gently wash it like I do, like the way I wash yarn in many of my videos. If there is significant bleeding, I'll pop back in to show you and to talk about that, but I'm not expecting there to be any, so I plan to take care of all that off camera. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. P.S. I almost forgot to show the yarn mop. It is beautiful with some deeper purple and then some hints of that navy. The color isn't showing up super great. When I did wash the cakes, there was a hair of bleeding. Nothing too bad, but I just wanted to pop back in and show off this pretty tonal yarn mop next to our 2 gradients. Thank you so much for watching, everyone.